Hello, everyone, and welcome to Live, Lead, and Inspire by ASIA TV. I am really excited to have our guest speaker here today, Walt Grassl. Walt is going to be talking to us about his life, his new books, about leadership. We're going to have a great time conversating, and you're going to learn a lot about how to get over your stage fright as well. Right, Walt?
Definitely.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and welcome Walt. Walt, now let me go ahead and I want to introduce him the way that I wanted to introduce him. He is a three-time author. Walt is an out-of-the-box thinker and a thought leader on leadership. He conquers fears, and he's talking about living life because he's done that and he's doing that now again. He took a weakness being an introvert with a severe stage fright, and at the age of 50, he overcame it. In the process, he reinvented himself and is now living his dreams. So Walt is a professional speaker. He's also an actor-performer. He is a radio show host of his show Stand Up and Speak Up, which we'll talk about later on. And he's an author of 2 books and 20-plus magazine articles. And I am so excited to welcome Walt on the show. Hi, Walt. How are you?
Hi, Asia. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here talking to you today.
It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you. Well, tell us about yourself.
Well, I started out in the corporate world. I worked for the same company from the time I was 17 till the time I retired at 55. And when I showed up on their doorstep to go to work the first day, I was petrified. I was shy, extremely shy, very introverted, but I was a hard worker. And while I was working there, I got my engineering degree. And a few years after that, they asked me if I wanted to be a leader. And I was a little shocked because I was the youngest one in the small team that they wanted me to lead. One of the members of the team was older than my father, and I couldn't give my dad orders, right? So, but I said, if you train me, I will do it. And in spite of shyness, and then when I had to give presentations, it was terrible. My hands would shake, my legs would shake. I'd perspire, I wouldn't sleep the night before, my mind would go blank. But in spite of all that, I developed relationships with people one-on-one and was able to be a successful leader, moving up to lead a department of 100 design engineers before I retired and lead big project teams. And then at about the age of 50, well, let me reset, about the age of 35, somebody told me about Toastmasters, and I go, oh, okay, maybe I'll be interested. You can go there and practice speaking. And they said, yeah. And they have this thing called table topics where they go around the room and you have to talk for a minute without any preparation. I said, okay, thank you very much. I'm not interested. But 15 years later, shortly before I turned 50, something happened, and the boss that had given me chances in spite of blowing interviews. That's one of the problems with stage fright. When you go to a job interview, especially a group interview, you suck at it, to be honest. And I did. But he goes, I know you can lead a department. I like the way you think. I'm going to put you in this position. But then I had to give a presentation, and it went very poorly. And he says, you got to do something about it. Talk to our HR guy. And I thought, oh, talking to HR, maybe I'm getting fired. But now the guy recommended I go to Toastmasters. This time I did it. And then I went on this journey, and it started slow. I spoke only 6 times in the first 18 months.
Oh.
Not a very good pace. And I thought, well, I'll just study about it. And I went to contests. And it wasn't until I went to some speaking seminars in Las Vegas and talked to people and realized that they have no more charisma than I do. They just got over their fear, or they're not afraid. So I said, okay, I want to be good enough to get paid to speak by the time I turned 55, which was a doable goal because that was in February of 2008. So I had like 4.5 years to overcome stage fright, and I did. And then a few months before I retired, I went on this journey to become an entrepreneur and plan my post-retirement life. And that's where the radio show evolved, and all these wonderful things I'm doing are outshoots of that. So we can get into more of the details of things I did, but see, before you couldn't get me to talk, now you can't get me to shut up.
Well, I love that story about you. And, one of the things that came to my mind as you were talking is that age doesn't define who the leader is. You said you were the youngest person in that team and they wanted you to be the leader. And, it shows that you have that charisma, how to be a leader. For you, it was more of, okay, I can't speak because I have this fear of speaking. And so, and I like that you talked about you knew about Toastmasters, but you didn't go until 15 years later.
Exactly. Some of us are slow.
Yeah. You know what? It's good because I think everything is going to happen in the right timing. And so it was the right timing for you to start Toastmasters, albeit it happened, a little bit afterwards. But hey, you're here. And we met actually through another event. You and I met through Casey Eberhardt. We met through his Networking Riches event a few years ago. And then found out that he was part of District 1 Toastmasters, which is here in the West Side Los Angeles area. It goes all the way to, I think, past Long Beach. I don't remember.
It ends at the Orange County border.
Oh, okay. So it ends right where Founders District ends up beginning, around there. Yeah.
And I'm in that corner of District 1.
Oh, okay. Wow, you're right there, right next to Founders District. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, so we're Toastmasters. Toastmasters has different districts within regions all over the world. And we've got speaking clubs everywhere. We do speaking, leadership roles. It's an amazing nonprofit organization. If you're interested in joining, if you're interested in being a better speaker, better leader, putting something on your resume, getting a raise by your boss, this is an organization to join. So definitely recommend it. And I'm sure Walt definitely recommends that too.
It was the first step on my journey. I took other steps as well, but that was the key first step. If I did not join Toastmasters, I wouldn't have found out about improv. I wouldn't have found out about stand-up comedy. I wouldn't have met a very influential person in my life, Craig Duswalt.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him at the International Convention in Las Vegas and joined his mastermind, and that's where Stand Up and Speak Up was born. And I got a lot of valuable coaching, and that's where I met Casey Eberhardt, Maurice Domino, several other people. And I learned something very important. If you sit at home and try and get better by yourself, it's a lot harder than when you get out and do things, because paths will cross. And when we met at Casey Eberhardt's event, it was kind of like a high and a quick meet and greet. And we didn't really connect, but we followed each other on social media, and you can learn what a person's about. And then when I saw you at the Toastmasters Christmas party a few months ago and heard you speak, I said, I got to have you on my radio show. But had I not, started going out and meeting people, I'm almost at 250 shows, and most of the guests I've run into at some event or another. So I have this network of extremely interesting people that I learned from, that I met just by not sitting on my rear end in this office and just looking on the computer, but getting out and putting myself in situations to interact with people, not with the intent to get something from them, but just to meet people and see what they're about and see who you resonate with and who you don't.
Yeah. Like a part of even, I believe a part of leadership is really creating that network and getting to know people and building a kind of a team. What you've done is you've built a team of people that can connect with one another. Now they connect with you, they're connecting with each other. And that's what, we do with Toastmasters. That's, if you hadn't brought yourself out there, Walt, I don't think you and I would have met. You and I have met all these influential people. And Craig Duswalt, I've heard a lot of really great things about him. I've intended to go to one of his seminars. I believe he had one a couple of years ago. So I think it was Maurice who was telling me about it. And I was like, I want to go. And I never got the chance to go. So hopefully the next one that he has, I can go there.
He has them in March and September. The next one is this week, actually. But if you'd like to be my guest in September, I'll make a note of it, and
awesome.
I'll invite you, and if it'll fit your schedule, we'll make that happen. And I just want to circle back to what we were talking about, the networking. That's actually how I became an effective leader. I was always, whenever they asked for somebody to volunteer and go outside of the organization to take special assignments, or if an area was short staffed, they needed to borrow somebody, they would often come to me, and I would always say yes. And I learned how the company worked. I met people, even though it was hard for a shy guy to go into a new situation, I forced myself. And then I became a people broker, where people would come to me and say, I got this problem. Who can I talk to help me? So I couldn't help them, but they knew that within one or two phone calls, I could connect them with the right people. So I built up a lot of relationship capital in the organization. And that's what made me an effective leader. It wasn't any charisma, outgoing personality. I was just nice, a hard worker. I didn't try and hog credit, and I would step up and take blame if it would help us move forward, even though it wasn't my fault. So people liked having me on their teams. And there's this whole concept of reluctant leaders. And as a leader, I would identify those people that were like me, and I would slowly but surely convince them that they could be leaders too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And see, that makes you a great leader because you're helping other people to become leaders and you're connecting. So you're a connector. And having a connector in the network is amazing because you never know when you need anyone. Like just so you said, someone says, I have a problem. Then they come to you. You can't solve it, but you know people who do. You make a couple phone calls and you're in, and that's the thing that I really enjoy about networking, of being a part of our organization and getting out there, and I get it, being a shy person. I'm not shy in general, but I can be very introverted and want to be, in my own space. And so having to get out there and really push ourselves to talk to people and get to know people and bring people together, it's a really good thing. And I believe every leader needs to have this ability to connect people with each other, because you never know who's going to be, the best help for you or for those in your circle. So thank you for telling us all of that. And, I wanted to talk about your, first of all, how did you get into stand-up comedy and acting? Because you talked about impromptu and you talked about that's how your show Stand Up and Speak Up came about. So I want to hear that whole history about it and how it became.
Okay. What the conferences that I went to, well, let me circle back. So going to all these conferences, I saw Darren LaCroix in October of 2017. I joined Toastmasters in August of 2016. So a little over a year. And I was just frustrated because, again, I was afraid to speak. And I went into the room where he was presenting ahead of time. I didn't know you weren't supposed to do that. And he's in the back setting up his materials. And I actually bought a package of his materials. And he said, you can join this group, which no longer exists, but it was called the Champions Edge. And if you belong to this group, you could get discounts and you could go to these trainings. And so I ended up going to a humor boot camp in February of 2018, a storytelling boot camp, and then a Lady in the Champ speaker conference. And they just recently had the final one of those. But it was Patricia Fripp, a Hall of Fame speaker.
Oh, I've heard of her.
Mark Brown, Craig Valentine, and Ed Tate, these Toastmaster world champions and a Hall of Fame speaker. And at the humor boot camp, I learned how to write and tell a joke. Even though when I had to get up on stage and tell the first joke, even reading it, my hands were like this. And I couldn't even tell a 4-line joke that I wrote without reading it from the piece of paper. And he did it with a professional comedian, Vinny Favorito. Darren and Vinny taught this class. And Vinny goes, you come up on stage, this big guy, and it looks like we should be afraid of you, and you're afraid of us. And it actually brought me to tears that I was so disappointed in myself that I just couldn't overcome this. But I had flown to Vegas for this, and this is where I went and talked to all these people, and that's when I made that vow that I would get better. And Darren teaches from a lady named Judy Carter, and she wrote a book on comedy. And coincidentally, I signed up for her thing, and she offered a stand-up comedy class. I took it, and after 6 or 8 weeks of class, the final thing is you do 5 minutes of stand-up at the Hollywood Improv in front of a public audience of 200 people with a 2-drink minimum. And I did it. And I know a lot of people that have signed up for these comedy classes and they don't do the performance.
Mm.
They're afraid. And I said, no matter what, I'm going to do it. And as I'm waiting, I was like the 20 something comic. There were like 40 of us. And I was like kind of in the middle. And I just kept getting nervous. And it's just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But I did it. And in the middle of and I was shaking and afraid. And in the middle of my set, my mind went blank. And it was, and then I remembered that they told us to write the list of your jokes, just by title, some to trigger you on a little 3x5 card and keep it in your pocket. And the guy before me had done that because he forgot. So I go, oh yeah, I got to look at it. And I pulled it up, I looked at it, put it in my pocket, and forgot what I just read. And then I slowly went into my pocket and looked again, and the audience laughed. They thought I was doing a bit, but I wasn't. But they're laughing, got me back on track. I finished my set. And from that point on, I was never as afraid to speak. The fear just started going less and less. And I like to open my speeches with a story or a joke, because if you can get the audience to laugh, even if it's laughing at you, not really bad insulting, but some sort of thing where you bring yourself down off of the pedestal and show that you can poke fun at yourself, and you get the audience laughing, it makes me comfortable, and there's a connection. It's the fastest way to connect with an audience, but the joke has to be relevant to the situation. You can't tell, why did the chicken cross the road joke, but if there's something about the venue or whatever, there are tricks to writing observational humor. You make an observation of something and just referring to it, the fact that you can refer to something about the event or the venue, people will laugh because they don't expect you to make that connection, and then you're in. So it's a skill that can be learned. I was not funny before I studied stand-up, but it's a great skill for a speaker to have, as well as improv.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you need to come down and you need to do a workshop here for our Toastmasters district on improv and comedy, because I think, a lot of people, when they're speaking, they don't know how to bring in the humor. Even myself, sometimes I'm not sure how to bring the humor into the speeches, into those things. And so when you're talking about poking fun at yourself in that way, that, it becomes really funny. And then it is a skill. It's definitely a skill to learn. Not everybody is naturally funny, So I would love to see you do a workshop about that. That would be.
Sure. I'm willing to share. So just invite me down. I'm happy to do that. And as part of Craig's mastermind, he has me teach improv. And I'm not an improv teacher. I'm not an improv expert. I have a lot of improv experience. And you've heard the expression, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephen Covey also, when I taught the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, they have a concept in there called teach to learn.
Yes.
So even doing this appearance on your show, this is helping me, because as I explain the thoughts to you, I'm learning them better. It's becoming more and more ingrained in me. Mm-hmm. So it's, and I would have never thought that I would enjoy what I'm doing right now. If you'd have asked me before I went on this journey, and even in my first couple years in Toastmasters, that I would be speaking, being interviewed on a show, you're crazy. They got to come and lock you up. You're nuts. I am.
Oh, wow. That's hilarious. Well, you know what? I'm glad you're on my show, because, you're teaching all of my viewers, my subscribers, so much more about improv and how it's amazing to, be able to do that while speaking. So that's amazing. And you know what? If you put it in a leadership twist, how does improv help with leadership?
Well, number one, I used to have this problem. I would get caught off guard by a question I didn't plan for. And, as somebody with stage fright whose mind would go blank, I didn't do the thing where you turn your back to your audience and read your PowerPoint slides. I knew not to do that, but I was good at the look over the shoulder and look at your slides to cue you as what comes next. And if somebody asked me my name and I wasn't prepared for it, I would and I wouldn't have been able to answer that question. So I would get asked questions I didn't know the answer to. And in improv, you learn to pull things out of your head. And it's a learned skill. I knew I took over 100 hours of improv, and I was always thinking ahead. And the worst thing you can do is think ahead in improv, because when you're building a scene with your partner or partners, it's about agreeing with what they said and adding information. And if you think ahead and then they take a different turn, now it's like, I can't say what I was planning to say. What did they say? And you just get tongue tied. And I went there one day after not getting a lot of sleep because of work commitments, because I'd started taking improv shortly before I retired. And all of a sudden improv got easy because I was too tired to think ahead. And I go, oh, that's what this is about. So you learn, if you follow the rules of improv, and there's a book called Improv Wisdom. I don't remember the lady that wrote its name, but she applies the rules of improv to life. Like when somebody says something, like if you're having an argument with somebody or a disagreement and they say something and you go, no, you're wrong. Well, that's not going to help solve the problem. You can go, yes, and then add information, but you have to acknowledge the other person's reality and then try and build from it. That doesn't mean you can't get to where you need to go or get your opinion across. But if you immediately say no, then that shuts off the conversation, just like it shuts off it shuts off the conversation, just like it kills an improv scene. Like if I say, and we're doing a scene, and I say, here's a loaf of bread, and you say, oh, thank you for giving me a rock, then we've just killed the scene, because is it a loaf of bread or a rock, right? So, and there's so many rules of wisdom that can apply to business. I've written an article. It's one of the articles in my book and on Article Weekly on how you can use improv for business.
You know what? Let's talk about the articles, because I did see a couple of the articles that you had written a while, just a while back, and I know that you just wrote a new book based off of the articles. So can you talk to us more about? Well, I want you to talk to us more about this book as well as your previous book that you had, Stand Up and Speak Up.
All right. Well, let me start with Stand Up and Speak Up, because when I retired, I was told that if you want to be a speaker, you have to have a point of view, something that somebody will hire you for. Mm-hmm. And everybody loved my story of overcoming stage fright. And the name Stand Up and Speak Up evolved. And there's a saying that if you don't stand up and speak up, how is the world supposed to know you exist? So I really resonated with that. And my book was kind of applying the lessons I learned as a project manager kind of to overcoming stage fright. And I learned from Craig Valentine in the storytelling that your speech should always have a foundational phrase, the point of the speech, something in like 7 words, something you could write on a business card that helps you focus the speech. Well, after my 6th speech, when I started speaking more frequently, every speech I wrote had a foundational phrase. And it turns out that I had this body of points I tried to make, like just because you couldn't do something before doesn't mean you can't do it now. Translated into just because you couldn't doesn't mean you can't, and several others. Well, I wrote a book where I told my story to encourage people that if they had stage fright, go ahead and you can overcome it. If I could do it, you could do it. And I just shared my stories through these speeches. I took them and converted them from being written to be spoken, to being written to be read. And then it occurred to me that people or corporations who pay the most for speakers are not going to call in somebody necessarily to tell their employees, hey, you know what, overcome your fear of stage fright and you can leave your job and go do whatever you want to do, right? That's not a message that pays. And then one of my coaches mentioned that they do pay for leadership speakers. And I mean, I overcame this handicap to become a leader. So as part of developing that credibility, I worked with a PR firm to craft articles that they could pitch to trade magazines. And that was very useful. And every 2 months I would publish an article, and you mentioned it was over 20. It's actually just under 20 articles, but they're all available on Article Weekly. They're available in my book with a little bit of other information, but it's my way of sharing the things I learned and some out of the box approaches to leadership. Because I'll give you a short story. In baseball, I played baseball, which, if you're not familiar with the game, part of it involves throwing, and a normal pitcher throws basically from up over their head and down. Well, I wasn't very good throwing that way, but I would throw sidearm, underhand. Basically, I made up for a lack of talent with a gimmick, because I was smart enough to learn gimmicks, even though I didn't necessarily have the athletic ability. And I kind of applied that same thing to leadership. Like when I took improv, even though it was late in my career, I learned how improv could help at work. I learned the concept of servant leadership, where it's not the leader's job to tell people what to do, because people don't want to do that. And this concept of treating your employees like they're volunteers, like they don't have to do what you say. So if you approach them with that respect and give them the opportunity to push back, like if you're asking them to do something that conflicts with something that they're already working on, or that is something that they don't have the skill set to do, or they could do it if they had this additional tool, or if they had somebody to help them. You create a culture where people are willing to push back at you, not in a negative way, like, I'm not going to do that, but hey, I'd love to do that for you, but, as opposed to, all right, I need you to do this and I need you to do it by Friday and I don't want to hear anything else. That just shuts people down, and it doesn't inspire loyalty. And you can use fear and intimidation to get short-term results, but those people will leave you or will just start tuning you out. So all these different keys I wrote in stories that are, there's kind of a structure to it, where you have these fictional characters with a problem, and then the solution are your bullet points of wisdom. And then at the end, they lived happily ever after, kind of like you would frame a speech.
Now, I really like that. I want to go back to what you were just saying about servant leadership, because one of the things, I'm taking a class right now for my master's program called Leadership in the 21st Century. And so every week we have to do these discussion posts about certain aspects of leadership. And one of the things that we're talking about this week is incentives. But the week before that, we were talking a lot about leadership and what does it mean to be a leader. And one of what you had said was the same thing I had said, that a leader doesn't tell somebody what to do. That's a manager, but that's not a leader. A leader is someone who empowers people. And so, as you were just saying about, instead of telling someone what to do, you're basically having them push back at you. It's in that sense, you're empowering them to use their own creativity. So you're telling them, hey, for example, we have our contest coming up. We have a lot of volunteers. We're all trying to get together and do things, but no one's, I'm the contest chair for one coming up this Saturday. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm saying we have these things that we've got to get done. Let's figure out who's going to take on the roles, and then let's go from there and move forward with whatever is going to happen. And so I'm empowering all of my volunteers and saying, okay, I want you to do this, but do it in the way that you want to do it. Let's just try to get it done as best as possible. Let's try to get it done by this week. This Saturday's the contest, but here I'm going to give you the freedom. So a servant leader gives that freedom for their teammate members to work, for their employees to work in the way that they are more empowered to do it, versus someone saying, okay, get it done, like you said, shutting them down basically. Then they can't even turn around and ask you anything.
Right. And it's about making sure they have enough clear direction to do the job properly, but not so much direction that they lose the freedom to think. And because an effective leader has a large span of control, and you cannot micromanage. Like, I couldn't micromanage a department of 100 design engineers. It's just not possible. So you have to develop trust, realize that in the process of trusting people, things may not always work out right, but instead of it being the end of the world, hopefully they have good judgment not to do anything catastrophic. And if it's a minor thing, I had a manager once say, you know what, we're going to trust our people. If they break a window, we'll sweep up the glass and we'll figure out how not to break it the next time, right? And a lot of this has to do, though, with judgment. You have to know who you can trust to go and make learning mistakes versus trusting a 5-year-old to drive a car and then they end up killing themselves and other people because they crashed the car, right? So there's judgment involved in the leader, in who to give that responsibility to, and it's training your people to use their judgment. And if you micromanage somebody, you don't allow them to grow their judgment muscle, right? If they never have to make decisions, how do they learn how to make decisions? So you have to be comfortable with things not going perfectly as long as they get done good enough, because training your people is just as important as getting the job done. And I had a boss, the one that sent me to Toastmasters, that was big on that. And he would even take employees that were working in an area for a certain amount of time and pull them out of their comfort zone. He goes, Joe over there, he's too comfortable. We need to move him over here so that he starts learning new things, because he's stagnating. He's happy and he can do that job in his sleep, but he's not growing. And we need to have that person grow and develop bench strength where people can come in and backfill for somebody. If somebody takes on another assignment, leaves the company, gets injured, you need to be able to have people that can fill in. And if you don't grow people, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And your boss sounds like he's a really great leader, because he's pushing people to learn and to grow out of their comfort zone. I think that's what a leader really does do, is tell people to grow out of their comfort zone and be more open to learning, because even as a leader, we have to be open to learning. Definitely. We got to get out of our comfort zone all the time as leaders. So with your book, and your book is talking about all these articles that discuss these aspects of leadership, I think that this is a book that everyone should pick up. When is it going to be published?
I've got to follow up today and follow up is one of the best project management skills. It's ready to be printed. So if you want a copy of the book, it can be ordered now. It's not on Amazon. It's going to be on my website. And the website is new and improved. It's waltgrassl.com. That's GRASSL. And there's a tab for the book. And the reason I wrote the book, and here's a little bit of a nugget for people, is one is to share the knowledge. But if you are a professional speaker and you want to get paid to speak, sometimes organizations cannot pay you the fee that you deserve, but they may be able to purchase training materials out of a separate budget. So if you have a book to sell and you give them a discount, if you take the profit that you make on the books and combine it with the speaking fee, you can actually make more money for a speaking event by having your own book to sell. Just a nugget for professional speakers out there.
Yeah, no, that's a great nugget. I hope everybody took note of that. Even I'm taking note of it in my head. Like, I'm going to go back and rewatch this video again and again just to take the notes. No, because it's true. And, it's funny that you're talking about that, because I'm also in the process of writing my book. And I have 3 different books in my head that I'm, sorting out right now, writing out at the same time. So it's going to take a little bit of time to write it out and get it out there, but it's going to get out there. So everybody, if you want to order his book, you can go to Walt Grassl, WaltGrassl.com. And the website is definitely, it looks really good. I love the website. I've seen it and it looks so nice and clean. It's just really, really nice. So yeah, definitely click on the tab that's there. It's the book tab, right?
I think it's author or writing or something like that. I don't have it up in front of me, but
okay.
Yeah, it's
one of the tabs up there.
Yeah, there's one for speaking, acting. Yeah, so I think it's the author one, and the other's the radio show, and then there's a few others. But yeah, it'll be pretty obvious which one to go to.
Right. So just go ahead and go on the website, tap on it, pre-order it. As soon as the book is published, it's going to be ready to go, and then you'll get your book copy. And you have your first book. That one's available for people to purchase.
You can actually get that one on Amazon.
Right, right.
And I think it's available as a Kindle as well. So.
And it's called Stand Up and Speak Up.
It's called Stand Up and Speak Up.
Okay. Now, what is that book about, so that our viewers know, our listeners know?
It's about overcoming your fears. I talk about some of the tricks that I used, the mindset. Just because you couldn't doesn't mean you can't. And I share some embarrassing stories about how I couldn't draw a cat when I was in first grade, and I cried, and it was very traumatic, and I labeled myself as someone who cannot draw. But then later in life, I actually learned how to draw, and I couldn't I wasn't mechanically inclined. It took me 3 sets of holes to hang a screen door the first time I tried to do it. So, but through time and practice, I've learned how to do a lot more mechanical things than I ever thought I would. And then I applied that same thing to speaking. Just because I couldn't speak, even at the ripe old age of 50, I was able to change and become a speaker, and look at all the things I'm doing now. So I'm a testament to be careful about the labels we put on ourselves, the I can'ts. So unless it's something like, you're 2 feet tall and you say, I can't dunk a basketball. Well, yeah, you can't overcome necessarily the laws of physics, but for a lot of things, that's just a cop out to not doing something. And, you may not have an aptitude for math, so maybe you don't want to be an engineer, but instead of just, oh, this is hard, I'm not going to try, be more disciplined or more strict about what you say you can't do. Let it be something you truly can't do, instead of that's just the easy way out. You know what I mean? That if it's something that would better your life, go ahead and take an effort and try and see if you can't learn how to do something. And you may not do it great, but you may do it at a level enough to give you some enjoyment that you wouldn't have otherwise had. So don't deprive yourself of that.
That's absolutely true. And you really, it's funny because I'm writing a book called Live Life Unveiled, and it's all about unveiling yourself so that society can see who you really are, rather than the masks that we put on and the labels that we're given. And, aside from the labels we give ourselves, other people give us labels as well. Okay, oh, Asia can't do this, or Walt can't do that. But if we're listening to what other people say, and then we listen to what we're thinking, oh yeah, we really can't do it. Like, I hate math. I can't pass it. I'm never going to pass it. Or, I'm never going to be a professional speaker. And we say those things. Not only are we stunting our growth, but we're putting labels that are not necessarily true. And society keeps putting labels on us that's not true either. So we have to really work hard on not allowing others to label us, as well as not labeling ourselves.
Definitely. And with respect to other people, in some of these entrepreneur groups, they say, don't tell anybody your dream. Because if somebody was raised to only do a 9-to-5 job, and that's their mentality, they, in a way of trying to protect you, they may say, oh, you shouldn't try and run your own business, or you shouldn't pursue a career as an actor or as a speaker. But they don't know your drive. They don't know your skill set. They don't know the risks you're willing to take. They apply their values to you and say, well, I wouldn't do it, so I'm going to advise you not to do it. So a lot of times, if you know who those people are, or you can kindly ignore their advice, or you can just not even tell them in the beginning until you've accomplished something. It's really funny when I go to the retirees from my company. I've been retired for a little over 5 years, and once or twice a year we get together and just catch up. And I like to say I'm either the laziest entrepreneur or the busiest retiree. People go, you're doing what? Oh man, you're so busy. But it's all stuff that I love to do, and it gives my life purpose, and I'm not sitting around waiting to die, and I'm having a good time, and I'm hopefully making a difference by helping people and exposing them to ideas and getting them to think a second time about how they're living their life, and maybe they can do things that will make them happier or more productive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. When we tell people about our dream, we don't know what the other person's thinking or reacting. Something I've actually done a speech on is, don't listen, especially if you're trying to build your confidence, you don't want to listen to people who are going to tell you something other than what you should know, which is that you will be successful. Because if someone comes and whispers in your ear and says, oh, are you sure you're going to be able to make that much money in your first year? Are you sure you're going to do this? They're putting that seed of doubt. And I think a lot of times what it is those people they're so fearful about their own selves that they're trying to project their fear onto you or other people who are working on their success. And then it's like, oh wait, what's going on? And so you gotta decipher who you're gonna listen to, who you're not gonna listen to. Most of the time, I'd say go and listen to your coach or your mentors who actually want you to grow, versus a friend or a family member who thinks that they have something of their best interest for you, but really what they're doing is sliding you down the drain. There, you don't want to slide down there. You want to get yourself up.
Yeah, and that's where it helps to have an accountability partner, somebody that you can share your goals and milestones for the week and have them hold you accountable. So they're a person who is not there to talk you out of your dreams or even really to be a cheerleader. But when you share with them what you want to accomplish, they act as another person to keep you accountable to yourself. And I'll share this quick thing where at the first mastermind for Craig, I was talking to a guy and say, when I retire, I want to start working out and losing some weight, because I was like way over 280 and had a lot of issues. And the guy goes to me, well, why can't you start working out now? Mm-hmm. And it's like it dawned on me, I can't tell him the lies that I tell myself. So that's what an accountability partner does. It forces you to be honest with somebody else where you might basically lie to yourself and say, I can't do that. Or now I was supposed to get something done by today, and Wednesdays is my accountability call, and I didn't get it done. And it's not the end of the world, but I feel bad that I'm letting Chris down because I told him that I would have my taxes done by today, but some other things came up, and that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. If things come and you have to change your plans, you change your plans. But there's this part of me that says, because I've been wanting to get them done for a while, but I said, no, for real, by Wednesday, they'll be done. Well, they're not. So it's like, but I'm a lot more productive having him there than if I didn't, because that and a lot of other milestones like the book, getting the website done, all those were things I was working on. And having him they sort of function like a boss, because when you're an entrepreneur, you're your own boss. And, but it's without all the micromanaging that comes with a boss. So it's like, right. It's the best of both worlds. So if you don't have an accountability partner, I suggest that people get one.
Yeah. And of course, get one that is going to be on top of you every week, because, and myself included, I've had accountability partners. I have one that, I had for a while, and she was in San Diego. I was here. We'd meet up once in a while, but we would talk to each other on a weekly basis every week and say, okay, this is where we're at. This is what we're doing. And then here's the next goal for the next week. And so we would just go from there. So you want to make sure you have accountability partners that are going to stick with you. Make it like a year contract. I want you to be a partner for 1 year, if that's something that works for you. I don't know if you agree to that, but I find that sometimes, because, we say we're going to have accountability partners, we start off really good, and then all of a sudden you lose them. You guys just start losing each other. So,
or you have to sometimes fire an accountability partner. I had an accountability partner that every week it was the same thing for forever.
Right.
It was more like a social hour for them there. And it just didn't work. But now, Chris Warner, who I talked to, he's an actor and a speaker, and he's been coaching me, helping me with acting, and I've been sharing what I know about speaking, and we've been mutually supportive. But we've been doing it now for several years now, and it's like a Wednesday, 5:00 is the call, and if it can't make it, because some people have accountability partners and they blow off the calls, they don't take them seriously.
Yeah.
And, life's going to get in the way, and once or twice a year, you may have to reschedule a call or something like that. But if it's, every other week you're missing your call, that defeats the purpose. And again, just like with relationships, not every match is a match. So you have to, keep shopping around until you find a good accountability partner for you.
Absolutely. So, that's why I like just look, be careful with who you choose, even with your accountability partners. Make sure that they really are going to hold you accountable, that you're going to hold them accountable, and both of you are working together as a team, because it is essentially a team. And
Definitely.
yeah, and that's what you want. You don't want an accountability partner who will start looking at you or judging you and saying, "Oh, well, you haven't done this," or not in that sense of of negativity, but sometimes, I found that sometimes I would get judged about why I was following a certain way, or why I was doing certain things that worked for me better than what they would suggest sometimes, or it just sometimes wouldn't work out. So you want to make sure you have a partner that you really work out with, and talk about it ahead of time. Well, here's what we should do on our calls, and create that
See,
relationship.
and what you just said kind of sounds like the person was part accountability partner, part coach. Because if they're telling you how to do something, that's not really a pure accountability partner. Is if you say, okay, by next week, I'm going to finish my website, finish my taxes, and follow up with the person who's given me the final version of my book to get published. And all they're going to do is go down that list. Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you didn't, you can explain why. And then what's the plan for, why didn't you, kind of,
Yeah.
and then what's next? Now, if you want to have a separate bouncing around ideas, looking for input, that's fine. But a true accountability partner, it's pretty much, this is what you said you were going to do. Did you do it? What are you going to do next week? And
Exactly.
you want to set long-term goals. And how you get it done, that's your choice, right? They're just there to hold you accountable. They're not a mentor. They're not, and sometimes it's good not to be a close friend or a family member as an accountability partner, because they will feel, because of their friendship. That doesn't mean you can't be friends with your accountability partner, but you have to keep the two things separate. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Right now, I joined a National Society of Leadership and Success, which is
mhm.
a chapter. It's a society chapter in our school. So every university, college who participates with the society, they have chapters. And what we have as part of our induction is it's called an SNT, which is a society networking team. And you actually get together with a group of 2 or 3 people, up to 6 if you really want, and each person, every week you would run a meeting, and it's all about accountability. This is your goal. You're following you're following the smart way of getting your goals done. And then your partners, everyone gets together. They each talk about what they did, how they're achieving their goals, and what they've done so far, what they've not done, and then how are you going to help them to, make sure they get their stuff done the next time with what they're saying. So it's an accountability group, and we get credit for it. So if we do 6 of these talks with each other in a group and we submit it to our society chapter, we get credit for that towards our induction. And I think that's a really great way, of course, of leadership, to be able to, have those people come together and help you to stay accountable. And, you can have a team of 2 to 3 or 6 people, and each one has a goal. And each one, then, like you said, goes down the list. What did you do this week? Did you get it done? And then, and we move on to the next week. And by the way, it's still Wednesday, so you still have enough time to do your taxes
Well,
before 5.
no. It's business taxes, so it's complicated. The personal part is done, and I've got other calls and whatnot. But sometimes life gets in the way, and that's okay. I mean, it's not like, oh, you missed a deadline, you're dead to me. It's not that serious. But I feel bad about it. And then it's like, I got to really make an effort to not let something get in the way. And, I do have a bad habit that Wednesday is my usual free day. So
Mm.
I'm a world-class procrastinator. So I will leave a lot of things for Wednesday morning and then try and work, from the morning until 5 o'clock and say, yeah, Chris, I took care of this. I took care of this. I just finished it an hour, but at least it got done before the due date, right?
Well, if Chris is watching this show, he's going to now know that your
You
secret.
said this wasn't live, that it's recorded for later dates. So, oh my gosh. No. He will see this though. He will watch it.
Yeah, and he's going to be like, so you really didn't do your taxes.
Yeah, but see, and then the first thing, I'm not going to try and make excuses. I'll say, look, things got in the way. I messed up and you can come down here. Fortunately, he lives a long distance. Otherwise, he's a tough guy actor. And so you can come down here and kick my rear end.
Oh my gosh. But that's what you want. You need an accountability partner like that.
Exactly.
But you know what? I want to like quickly ask you too about your stand up and speak up show. I was a guest speaker on your show just a few weeks ago. So I want to know how this show came about. Because I know that you said the show came about while you were in Craig Duswalt's seminar. So
Yeah,
let's talk about that.
Craig had a radio network, and at his boot camp, they would talk about the power of having a radio show. And as I was writing the book, I said, okay, let me try this radio show. I didn't know where to start, but it has been extremely valuable. And today's Wednesday. Tomorrow, Thursday, will be my 245th show. At the end of April 2018, the last show of that month will be my 250th. So I've been doing it for over 5 years, and that will be my 250th show. I am so much more comfortable as a speaker. In overcoming stage fright, what really worked for me was making eye contact with the audience. I don't know if you noticed that when I spoke at that Christmas event where we were at and speaking, but eye contact, because now I'm having a conversation just like I am with you. But when I'm doing a radio show, I'm talking to the wall or to my computer with nothing on there. I get no feedback. I used to hate talking on the phone at work. I would walk 10 minutes to somebody's office to have a conversation instead of just picking up the telephone. So I got a lot more comfortable as a speaker. Think about it. I talk for a good part of an hour every week. And it's all unscripted. I mean, there's a little bit of scripting on the going into and out of the breaks, but it's just having a conversation. So that helps me have conversations. As a shy guy, I was not as comfortable even in my 50s. So doing the show, and it helped me. We talked about the networking benefits of all the people I've met. I wouldn't be on this show if I didn't ask you to be on my radio show. When we spoke, I said, I got to get you on my show. And you go, you know what? You should be on mine. So it gives us exposure. And the exposure isn't, to me, it's not a vanity thing. I think I have life lessons that can help other people. So the more people I get in front of, the more people that can hopefully benefit. And if just one person watching this takes one tip and makes a positive change in their life, it's worth it, right? Instead of just, my original goal for retirement was to sit on my couch in my underwear, watch TV, and occasionally go out and play golf. So, but I wouldn't have been making a difference. I would have just been sitting around collecting my retirement, waiting to die. So this way, it's an opportunity to make a positive difference in the world. And but if I looked at it like that, there would be too much pressure. But anyway, I'm just having fun sharing the random thoughts of a lunatic to whoever will listen to me. So I think I got sidetracked. Oh, you're asking about the radio show. So, and then it gives my life a pace, because every Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Pacific, I go on the air. So I have I usually like to talk to my guests for 15 minutes to go over the show on the Monday before. I publish a show blog that gets posted on the station page. It gives my life some structure, because when you go from a very structured 9-to-5 life, or as a manager, it's 9 to whenever you can go home, to being retired, that's a big shot. You don't have anywhere to be at any particular time. So the radio show gives me a little structure, gives me the network, gives me a platform, and it gives me speaking practice. So there's a whole lot of benefits. And I just took a leap of faith. I do a lot of things and I trust my gut. My gut said, sign up for the radio show. And I did. And the first show I did with no guests, talking for an hour, was torture. But every show after that was easier. So.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that your first show that you did by yourself was torture. When I started my YouTube channel, I was doing solo shows. I would just sit down in front of the video. And I usually don't rehearse. I'm very impromptu. I just sit in front of the camera and I'll just start talking about a specific topic and just keep talking about it and then get my 20 minutes and I've done my first show. So my shows can last anywhere between 20 minutes, or if I'm interviewing, it can be even longer than that. So when I first started, I was doing a lot of solo shows, and then I decided to start bringing in people to interview because I thought, I want to make this, a show where people can not only just hear what I have to say, but what other people have to say with me.
Mm-hmm.
And bring people together that way. Why not? So then it evolved into that, where I still do solo videos. I just did one a couple weeks ago, and I do interviews. So I try to interchange between solo videos and interviews because I don't know, I guess I don't mind talking to myself on a video camera.
You're better than I am.
But you know what, I'm gonna make sure that this is also available as just an audio, because I know people like to hear things while they're driving, and I want to make sure this is accessible to everybody. So it will maybe think, they'll know that we're on the video, but at least, we're not talking to the wall, and it's not a big deal if we are. The walls listen.
Definitely. But I mean, it is a challenge to not because when we're having this conversation now, I can see your facial expressions. I see that I'm resonating. If you started nodding off, I know, okay, this story's getting a little boring. Yeah. So, you don't get that over the phone, but I've learned, and again, when it's my show, I'm usually asking the questions instead of just speaking. And one tip I figured out recently, because I have a producer, I can actually, if I don't have a guest, if I have problems booking a guest and I don't have to do the whole show by myself or cancel the show, I can just have a conversation with the producer. And the last couple of times I've been alone, we've called it dueling questions and we play the dueling banjos music. And we just take turns asking each other questions, which helps me with this, because if I'm only used to asking questions and following up and throwing in a little tidbit, I'm not used to being asked questions I'm not prepared for. But
Right.
because I've done probably in the last 4 months 3 shows that way, talking to you, there was no nervousness because Ed's been asking me questions periodically, and I'm used to taking things as they come.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. And that's why I like doing these kinds of shows, because, I'm asking you questions. We're also doing commentary, and we're just enjoying each other's company at the same time. And really, that's what we're doing. And we're providing whatever insight that we have, that you've provided, that I've been providing to the audience who's listening. And that's the beauty of these shows. And I'm just really glad that you're here doing this with me.
Thanks. It's a pleasure. And you bring up another point. Some guests feel like they want to talk to the audience, and then they're basically talking to the audience. And in my opinion, what makes good radio or good TV interviews is people eavesdropping or spying on our conversation. And if we have an interesting conversation, they listen to and they will get benefit from. But if we say, okay, now all you listeners out there in YouTube land, here's this, I don't know, that doesn't work for me. It may work for other people, but I like the fact this is just you and I having a conversation within a structure, and people will be watching it. But if nobody watches, it will be a beneficial hour because we will have had a good exchange of ideas.
Exactly. And the people who do end up watching it will obviously listen to this exchange of ideas and use it to help themselves. And like you said, if we've made impact in just one person on the show, we've done our job for the day or for the year. I look at it the same way. So, who knows who we just helped today with learning more about leadership.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I was at a speakers conference and I had a stand up and speak up shirt on, and somebody came up to me and goes, "You're Walt Grassl." And I go, "Yes, I am." He goes, "I listen to your show." And I'm like, I thought only friends of mine or friends of my guests who listen to that show. And I go, "Oh, were you following somebody else?" And he goes, "No, I was looking for Patricia Fripp. I saw your podcast and I like to listen to podcasts." And he goes, "You're the second best podcast on speaking." And he goes, "Wait a minute, you're the best because the guy that was doing it, he stopped doing them." And that was cool. And it's like you never know who's listening. Have you ever had somebody that you didn't know come up to you based up and recognize you for doing your show? It's a rush.
Yeah, no, totally. And I actually haven't had that experience yet, but I'm sure I will at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just started it. It's not even been a year yet. So,
Mhm.
as I grow it, I know I will.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
definitely. And it's a powerful thing, because sometimes I forget that there are people listening, to be honest. Because in the beginning I was thinking, God, this is going around the world. Who could, and I would let it psych me out. But now I'm just in the moment, and it's just you and I having a conversation. And but who knows? And you have a tribe of people that follow you that may not know me, so I'll get some exposure, and maybe some of them will listen, and one day our paths will cross, and they go, I know who you are.
Right. And you never know. Maybe one of them might say, hey, we're going to have you come down and speak at our club and be a keynote speaker or a guest speaker.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. It's funny because I didn't even know this. I just recently became part of the Speakers Bureau with District 52. And I don't know who recommended me. Who recommended me? Because I heard from District 100, the program quality director there. He emailed me. He messaged me actually on my Facebook page, because I have my own fan page. He messaged me there and he said, we're looking for a keynote speaker. We had a keynote speaker who dropped out. We would like for you to take our place. And we heard we had some high recommendations from people about you. And I was like, who are these people that talked about me? I want to know. They were, and it might have been one of the people from the Speakers Bureau here that might have reached out to them and said, oh, talk to her about it. But it's amazing, because really, I think that I had that high last night when I saw it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my name just went to District 100. I'm barely putting my foot in there. Like, I just joined a club over there about 6 months ago. And even then, I've not been able to go to the club as regularly, because they're in Pasadena. Sometimes it's been a little hard to go there, but I try to go as much as I can. And so to hear that another district wants me to come be a keynote speaker, it just put me. And the way that he said, "Oh, we've heard really good things about you," and I was like, "Where? Who?" It's definitely an exhilarating thing. Yeah.
And that reminds me, one of my points in my first book is, when opportunity knocks, answer the door, because behind that door lie other opportunities and other doors to go through. And it just, while you were sharing that, about how did you get there, we met at the ACTS Christmas party.
Yes.
Vernon.
Yes, Vernon. I just saw him last night.
Vernon was the photographer at the Founders District LACE, I think it was, their what we called TLI, their learning event.
Yeah.
The person organizing that, Deborah Reisdorf, asked me to be a keynote speaker. He was the photographer, so he saw me speak. He connected. I interviewed him on the radio show. He asked me to be on, they were trying to do an online like Toastmasters meeting, or wanted video tips, and I videoed in for that. He invited me to speak at that event because I answered the door for Casey Eberhardt, which was a result of a Maurice Domino event, which was as a result of Craig Duswalt, which was as a result of Toastmasters. I met you there, and then our doors of opportunity crisscrossed at that Christmas party, and then created opportunities for you to be on my show, me to be on yours. And again, when those opportunities arise, they say, Craig Duswalt says, say yes to opportunity, always say yes. Well, that's good to a point, but if you're always, I put it in the framing of, if you're usually saying no to things because you just don't like to do things, start saying yes. But at a certain point, if you say yes to everything, you get to be like maybe where you are now, where you become overextended and it affects your quality of life. And then you need to maybe start to learn when you should say no and when you should say yes. So all these rules and maxims that are out there that apply, take them in the context that works for you, but they're not a law that's 100%. And this is where we circle back to the quality of good judgment, right? You have to know when to apply that rule and when not to. So you do the right thing, because if you're running yourself ragged because every time somebody asks you to speak or to volunteer to help, because that's how your heart is. And then you're not getting any sleep. You're not getting your homework done. You're running yourself ragged. You're not eating right, getting exercise and all that because you're saying yes to everything. Then you need to rethink saying yes. I don't know of anybody in this conversation that might apply to, but
And you're pointing at me, huh? Don't say yes to
there's only two of us here.
Yeah, because I'm doing all these contests right now. That's the thing. I'm going to be a contest master on Friday evening. I'm a contest chair for Saturday, and I'm doing all that work right now. And then I'm contest master for the afternoon. And now I'm going to be contest master for the following contest next weekend. It's like ongoing, but I honestly don't mind, helping out because this is something that I'm very passionate about, and I don't mind. I put it on my resume, so it helps me, in my resume. But no, it's interesting that you say that because people do not know how to say no, and I've been like saying no to a few other things.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, but when it comes to the speaking opportunities, I will say yes all the time. Well, I love it.
That's your judgment, and you have to do what you have to do. But again,
just know, yeah.
There's no absolutes. It's always take it with a grain of salt, and for every rule, there are exceptions to the rule that
absolutely
at times.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's another thing of a good leader is a good leader learns how to take care of themselves, and they learn when they're going to say no and when they're going to say yes by using their judgment values. Absolutely. Definitely. Absolutely. Well, Walt, we have been on here for about an hour now. Wow. The longest show that I've actually ever done is with you. Oh, wow. Which is great. Yeah, no, that's great because we've had a lot of fun. We've learned so much about leadership and improv and comedy and about you, Walt, especially about you, because I think you're such an amazing person, and that's why I was like, I need to make sure I get Walt on my show, just as you wanted me to be on your show. So we together, I think we had fun today. What do you think, Walt?
Oh, definitely. And I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you and share ideas. And if you ever want me back, or I'm happy to continue the conversation. It was a blast. It was enjoyable. I'm really glad we scheduled this. And, I could have been working on my taxes, but this was so much more fun.
Anything is fun than taxes. Yeah. Anything. Even shopping is fun than taxes.
I'm not a shopper. I don't have the shopping gene. But
you don't know. I have the shopping gene. I'll go shopping any day over doing taxes. No, but you know what? I'm so glad you're on the show today, Walt. Thank you so much for being here and for teaching us and talking to us. And I to my viewers out there, if you have not subscribed to my channel, Live, Lead, and Inspire by Astia TV, click the subscribe button that you see below. It's that red button down there. Subscribe to the TV show, and that way you'll always be notified whenever a new show is uploaded, whenever I have a new interview, or even my own solo episodes coming up on Live, Lead, and Inspire by Astia TV. Once again, Walt, thank you so much for being here, and thank you everybody for listening and tuning in. I hope you all took some really good notes, because we had some really awesome golden nuggets coming out from Walt. And if you want to purchase his book and you want to follow him on social media, all the links and everything are below the video. All you need to do is just tap the show more, and you will see the links, you'll see his bio, you'll see his information. And at some point, I'm hoping that by the end of this year, I'll have a website going, which will have the videos. And under the videos, you'll be able to see more information about our speakers. So that way, every speaker of mine will have their own little website going. And that's something that I want to definitely let you all know that I'm working on right now. And I'm also working on a few other things. We'll be talking about that in the next show. Till then, I hope you all have a wonderful day and night, evening, wherever you're at and wherever you're listening to Live, Lead, and Inspire by Astia TV. Have a great one. Bye-bye.